The first thing I noticed was the silence. Not the peaceful kind that settles over a ranch before sunrise, when the cattle are still lying low and the whole world seems to be holding its breath. No, this was different. This was the kind of silence that comes right before a storm breaks, when every man in town feels something wrong in his bones, but nobody wants to be the first to say it out loud. I was standing outside Miller's General Store with a sack of flour under one arm and a coil of rope hanging from my shoulder when the dust rose at the far end of Main Street. 5 riders came through it slow. Too slow. Men passing through usually rode with hunger in their eyes or tiredness in their backs. These men rode like they had nowhere else to be and no reason to hurry. Their horses moved in a straight line, shoulder to shoulder, as if the street belonged to them before they even reached it. I narrowed my eyes against the sun. West Texas heat can play tricks on a man. It bends the air, blurs faces, turns strangers into memories. But even from that distance, I knew those riders weren't ordinary drifters. The man in the middle wore a black coat despite the heat. His hat sat low, hiding most of his face, but there was something about the way he held himself that made my stomach tighten.
Proud.
Patient. Dangerous. I shifted the flour sack against my ribs and told myself not to stare. That was the rule I had lived by for nearly 8 years. Keep your head down. Do your work. Mind your land. Let the past rot where you buried it. Caleb. I turned. Martha Miller stood in the doorway of the store, wiping her hands on her apron. She was a small woman with sharp eyes and silver hair pinned tight behind her head. Her husband had died 3 winters back, and she had run that store alone ever since with more grit than most men in town. You see them? She asked. I see them.
Trouble.
I watched the riders draw closer. The horses' hooves struck the dry street with a slow, heavy rhythm. Could be just passing through, I said. Martha gave me a look that told me she didn't believe that any more than I did. Nobody moved as the riders entered town. The blacksmith stopped hammering. 2 boys who had been chasing each other near the water trough froze beside a wagon wheel. A dog lying in the shade under the jail porch lifted its head but didn't bark. That told me enough. Animals know. The riders passed the church, then the barber shop, then the undertaker's place. Their eyes moved over everything, doors, windows, faces, with the calm interest of men measuring what they could take. The one in the black coat finally pulled his horse to a stop in front of the saloon. The other 4 stopped with him. For a moment, nobody spoke. Then the man in black pushed his hat back. My fingers went cold. I knew that face. Older now, leaner, with a scar running from the corner of his mouth to his jawline. But I knew him. I knew the cruel set of his eyes. I knew the smile that never reached them. Silas Crow. A dead man standing in the middle of Redemption, Texas. At least he was supposed to be dead. The flour sack slipped a little in my grip. Martha noticed. You know him, she whispered.
No.
The lie came fast. Too fast. Silas turned his head slowly, scanning the street. I stepped back into the shade of the awning before his eyes reached me. My heart beat hard once, then again, like a fist against a locked door. 8 years. 8 years since Abilene. 8 years since the smoke, the blood, the screaming horses, and the last time I had held a gun with murder in my heart. I had buried that part of me on a cold night beneath a sky full of stars. I had changed my name, bought poor land nobody wanted, and built a life from sunup to sundown until my hands forgot everything except work. But the past had ridden into town wearing a black coat. Silas dismounted. The 4 men followed. They were hard-looking men. One was tall and narrow, with a rifle across his back and a gray beard cut close to his chin. Another had a red bandana around his neck and eyes that jumped from person to person like he was hoping somebody would make a mistake. The third looked young, maybe 25, but his face was empty in a way only violence can make a man empty. The last was big as an ox, with a shotgun resting easy in his hands. That shotgun caught my attention. A Winchester, 12 gauge, well-used, oiled, ready. I had one just like it locked in a chest back at my ranch. Silas stepped onto the saloon porch and looked around the street with that thin smile of his. Well, he called, voice smooth as river stone, ain't this a welcoming little place? No one answered. The saloon doors swung open behind him, and Tom Avery stepped out. Tom owned the saloon, though most folks said the saloon owned him. He was broad in the belly, red in the face, and usually too loud for his own good. That day, he wasn't loud. "You boys need something?"
Tom asked.
Silas looked at him. "Whiskey.
Food.
Beds for the night." Tom swallowed. "We've got rooms." "I figured you did." The red bandana man laughed softly. Silas stepped closer to Tom. "Any law in this town?" Tom glanced toward the jail. "So did everyone else." Sheriff Daniel Pike stood on the porch, thumbs tucked into his belt. He was a decent man.
Fair.
Brave enough for a normal town with normal troubles. But men like Silas Crow weren't normal trouble. "I'm the law," Pike said. Silas smiled wider. "Good to know." The two men stared at each other across the street. The wind dragged dust between them. I could feel the whole town waiting. Then Silas tipped his hat slightly. "Relax, Sheriff. We're just thirsty." He turned and pushed through the saloon doors. His men followed him inside, one by one. The big man with the Winchester was the last to enter. Before he disappeared, he looked back over the street and grinned. The silence held a few seconds longer. Then the town breathed again. People began moving, but slower than before. Doors closed. Curtains shifted. The blacksmith went back to work, though his hammer struck weaker now. Martha touched my arm. "Caleb, your face has gone white." "I'm fine." "You ain't fine." I looked toward the saloon. Through the dirty front window, I could see shapes moving inside. Silas had taken a table near the center. Of course he had. Men like him always wanted the room to bend around them. Martha lowered her voice. "Who is he?" I forced myself to look away. "A bad man." "That all?" "That's enough." I carried the flour and rope to my wagon, each step feeling heavier than it should have. My horse, Blue, flicked his ears when I came near. He sensed my nerves, too. I loaded the supplies into the back and tightened the reins around my hand. "Leave," I told myself. "Go home. Lock the door. Let the sheriff handle it." But even as I climbed onto the wagon seat, I knew the truth. Silas hadn't come to redemption for whiskey. He hadn't come for food. He hadn't come because the road led him here by chance. He came hunting. Maybe not for me. Not yet. But eventually he would hear my name. Or see my face. Or someone would mention the big rancher outside town who lived alone and never talked about where he came from. Then he would know. I guided Blue down Main Street, keeping my eyes straight ahead as we passed the saloon. I almost made it. Then the doors swung open. "Hold there." The voice cut through the street like a blade. I stopped. My hands tightened around the reins. Silas stepped out onto the porch, holding a glass of whiskey. He looked relaxed, almost amused. His eyes landed on me, and for one terrible second, I thought recognition had already struck him. But he only looked at the wagon. "That your spread?" he asked. I kept my face still. "A few miles west." "Cattle." "Some." He took a sip. "Name?" The whole street seemed to shrink around me. I could lie. I had lied before. I had lived inside a lie so long it nearly felt like truth. But Martha was behind me. Tom was watching from the saloon window. Sheriff Pike stood across the street. "Too many ears." "Caleb Turner," I said. Silas repeated it softly. "Caleb Turner." "No recognition." "Not yet." His smile returned. "You're a big man, Caleb Turner." I said nothing. Big men usually think they can stand where others step aside. "I'm just trying to get home." Silas studied me. For a moment, the years disappeared. I saw a burning camp outside Abilene. I saw Silas laughing with blood on his sleeve. I saw my own hands wrapped around a rifle, shaking not from fear, but rage. Then Silas lifted his glass. "Then get home." I clicked my tongue, and Blue started forward. I didn't look back, but I felt Silas watching me until the town disappeared behind the dust. The ride to my ranch took nearly an hour. The land stretched wide and dry around me, all yellow grass, mesquite, and red dirt. The sky was huge and hard blue, without a single cloud to soften it. Usually that ride calmed me. Usually, the open country reminded me why I had chosen this place. That day, it felt empty, exposed. When I reached my cabin, I unhitched Blue, fed him, and carried the supplies inside. My home wasn't much. 2 rooms, a stone fireplace, a table, a bed, shelves, and a back window facing the pasture. But I had built most of it myself, board by board. A man takes pride in what his hands make, even when those same hands have done things he wishes they hadn't. I stood in the center of the room for a long while listening. Nothing. Only wind. Only cattle lowing in the distance. I went to the chest beneath my bed. For 8 years, I had not opened it. The iron latch was stiff. Dust clung to the lid. My thumb brushed over the lock, and for a second I saw myself from the outside, a grown man afraid of a wooden box. Then I opened it. Inside lay my old Winchester shotgun, wrapped in oiled cloth. Beside it, a worn leather gun belt. And under that, a folded newspaper from Abilene. I didn't touch the paper. I unwrapped the shotgun. The wood stock was dark, scarred near the grip. The metal still held its dull shine. I had kept it clean at first out of habit, then stopped because touching it made the memories too loud. Now I lifted it in both hands. It felt familiar. Too familiar. I hated that. As the sun dropped low, I loaded the shotgun and set it across the table. Then I sat beside it, staring through the window as the light drained from the land. I told myself Silas might leave by morning. I told myself redemption was just another town to him. I told myself a lot of things, but deep down I knew better. Near midnight, a rider came hard up the trail. I stood before he reached the yard, shotgun in hand. The horse stopped outside, breathing hard. Sheriff Pike swung down from the saddle. His hat was gone. Blood ran from a cut above his eyebrow. His shirt was torn at the shoulder. "Caleb," he said, voice rough. I opened the door. "What happened?" He looked past me at the shotgun on my hands. His expression changed. "You know who they are." I didn't answer. Pike stepped inside, limping. "They took over the saloon. Beat Tom near to death. Said by tomorrow every business in town pays them for protection." He wiped blood from his eye. When I told them that wasn't happening, the big one broke my deputy's arm. My jaw tightened. "Why come to me?" Pike looked me straight in the eye. "Because when Silas Crow heard your name again, he smiled." My blood went cold. The sheriff reached into his coat and pulled out something small. A playing card. The ace of spades. He placed it on my table beside the Winchester. "Crow told me to bring you this," Pike said. "Said you'd know what it means." I stared at that card. And just like that, the grave I had built inside myself cracked open. Silas knew. He had always known. The sheriff's voice dropped. "What did you do, Caleb?" I picked up the ace of spades and felt the old fear return, hard and sharp. Then I looked toward the dark window, where my own reflection stared back at me with a shotgun in its hands. "I survived," I said. And outside, beyond the ranch and the moonlit fields, the town of Redemption waited for morning like a man waiting for the gallows. I didn't sleep that night. Sheriff Pike stayed at my cabin until the fire in the stove had gone low and the moon outside had turned pale behind a thin veil of dust. He sat at my table with one hand pressed against his ribs, his face gray with pain, while the ace of spades lay between us like something alive. I kept looking at it. Black ink. Sharp corners. A little bend on one edge, where Silas Crow must have held it between his fingers. 8 years had passed, but that card still had the power to pull me backward. Back to Abilene. Back to the men I used to ride with. Back to the night I learned that some sins don't die just because a man changes his name. Sheriff Pike watched me from across the table. "You gonna tell me what this means?" I rubbed both hands over my face. My palms smelled faintly of gun oil from the Winchester resting beside me. "It means Crow didn't come here by chance." I figured that much. He used to leave that car behind. Pike's eyes narrowed. "Behind where?" I stared at the stove. "Wherever he wanted people to remember him." The sheriff was quiet for a long moment. Outside, Blue shifted in the corral. The wind moved across the roof with a dry, scraping sound. "You rode with him," Pike said. It wasn't a question. I looked at him then. For a time, his mouth tightened. I didn't blame him. A lawman hears a thing like that and starts measuring the distance between the man sitting in front of him and the criminal he might still be. I was young, I said. Angry. Stupid enough to think the world owed me something because it had taken so much. Pike leaned back slowly, wincing from the pain in his side. Most young men are angry. Most don't ride with killers. No, I said. They don't. That truth sat heavy in the room. I could have stopped there. I could have given him only enough to explain the card and kept the rest locked away. But Pike had ridden injured through the dark to warn me. And by morning, his town would be looking at him to stand against men he couldn't stop alone. He deserved the truth. Or, at least the part of it I could bear to say out loud. I lost my family when I was 17, I told him. Fever took my mother first. My father went 3 weeks later. We had a little place east of San Angelo, poor land, but honest. After they died, the bank took what was left before I even understood the papers I'd signed.
Pike said nothing.
I worked cattle drives after that. Slept under wagons. Ate dust for breakfast and beans for supper. I was big even then, and men thought that meant I could take more than most. Maybe I could. I swallowed. Then I met Silas Crow. The name changed the air between us. He wasn't what he is now, I continued. Or maybe he was, and I was too blind to see it. He had money, confidence, men around him who laughed at every word he said. He told me I didn't have to spend my life breaking my back for ranch owners who would never remember my name. He said a man had to take what the world refused to give. Pike's eyes dropped to the ace of spades. And you believed him. For a while. That was the shame of it. Not that Silas fooled me. That I wanted to be fooled. I wanted to believe there was justice in stealing from men who had more than me. I wanted to believe violence could be clean if you aimed it at the right people. I wanted to believe loyalty made us brothers instead of criminals. But violence never stays where you point it. One job changed everything, I said. Pike waited. I looked toward the window. Dawn was still hours away, but the eastern sky had started to lose its blackness. Outside Abilene, Silas planned to hit a payroll wagon. Supposed to be 2 guards and a driver. Quick work. No killing unless it turned bad. But it turned bad. It was never a payroll wagon, I said. It was a family heading west. Husband, wife, 2 children, and an old man with them. Silas knew. He had known all along. They were carrying deed papers and money from a land sale. He wanted it. Pike's jaw hardened. I told him we were leaving, I said. Told him I wouldn't be part of robbing children. What happened? I could still hear the girl crying. I could still smell gun smoke in cold air. I drew on him. The sheriff's eyes lifted. I shot 2 of his men. Silas shot me here. I touched my left side, where the old scar still pulled tight on cold mornings. I thought I killed him before I passed out. But you didn't.
No.
Who saved the family? I closed my eyes briefly. The old man got them away in the wagon.
I don't know what happened after.
I woke up 2 days later in a lined shack with a fever, a hole in my side, and no horse. I took a dead man's coat, walked south, and never used my old name again. Pike studied me. What was your old name? I met his stare. It died in Abilene. For a second I thought he might push. He didn't. Maybe because he was a good sheriff. Maybe because he understood that some names are graves. The stove popped softly. I reached for the ace of spades and turned it over. On the back, written in pencil, were 4 words I hadn't noticed before. Finish what you started. A coldness moved through me that had nothing to do with the night air. Pike saw my face. What does it say? I handed him the card. He read it and cursed under his breath. He wants a showdown, Pike said.
No.
He wants a spectacle. What's the difference? A showdown can end quick. A spectacle is meant to teach everyone watching. Pike stood or tried to. Pain bent him forward. I caught his arm before he hit the table. You're hurt worse than you're admitting, I said. He pulled away, proud, even half-broken. I'm still sheriff. You're one man. So are you. I looked down at the Winchester.
No, I said.
I'm something worse to him. Pike didn't answer, because he understood. To Silas Crow, I wasn't just a man. I was unfinished business. By sunrise, we rode toward town together. Pike sat stiff in the saddle, one hand pressed to his ribs. I rode Blue beside him with my Winchester wrapped in canvas and tied behind my saddle. I didn't want it seen. Not yet. The morning came harsh and bright. Heat rose early from the dirt, and the horizon shimmered as if the whole world were made of old glass. Buzzards circled far off over the flats, lazy and patient. I had always hated buzzards. They never caused the dying. They just knew where to wait. As redemption came into view, my chest tightened. The town looked the same at first glance. Same church steeple, same water trough, same row of sun-beaten storefronts, but something had changed. Fear has a way of painting itself over wood and glass. It hung in the stillness of closed doors. It hid behind curtains. It crouched in the empty street. No children played near the wagon wheel. No hammer rang from the blacksmith shop. Even the dog under the jail porch was gone. We stopped outside the sheriff's office. Deputy Ellis sat on the steps with his left arm bound in a sling. He was barely 20, freckles across his nose, his face pale from pain and humiliation. When he saw Pike, he stood too fast. "Sheriff, sit down before you fall down," Pike told him. Ellis looked at me, then away. That told me news had already spread. Maybe not all of it, but enough. "Where are they?"
Pike asked.
"Saloon," Ellis said. "Been there all night. They made Tom open the bottles and cook for them. This morning Crow sent Boyd to collect from the mercantile." "Martha?" I asked before I could stop myself. Ellis looked at me again. She refused. My hands tightened on the reins. Pike heard it in my voice. "What happened?" "Boyd knocked over shelves, took cash from the drawer, said he'd be back before sundown for the rest." I turned Blue toward the general store. Pike called after me, "Caleb." I didn't stop. Martha's front window was cracked. Flour dust covered the porch like pale ash. Inside, cans lay scattered across the floor. A barrel had been kicked over, and a shelf of fabric bolts leaned broken against the wall. Martha stood behind the counter, sweeping glass into a pan with sharp, angry strokes. She looked up when I entered. For one moment her face softened. Then she saw my eyes and shook her head. "Don't you start," she said. I stepped over a broken jar of peaches. "Are you hurt?" "My pride is bruised worse than anything else." "Martha." She paused. There was a dark mark on her cheek, near the jaw. My vision narrowed. "Who did that?" She set the broom aside. "A coward who wanted me to cry." "Did you?" Her chin lifted.
"No."
That almost broke my heart more than if she had. I had known Martha Miller for 6 years. She had sold me seed on credit when drought nearly ruined me. She had wrapped bread in cloth and pretended it was extra, so I wouldn't feel like a charity case. She had never once asked about my past, though I knew she wondered. Now my past had walked into her store and put a mark on her face. Because of me. "I'm sorry," I said. She frowned. "For what?" I looked around at the damage. "This. You didn't break my window."
"No."
"But I brought him here." Martha studied me carefully. Her anger faded into something heavier. "So you do know him?" I nodded. "Is he here for you?" "Yes." She breathed in slowly through her nose. "Then you better decide whether you're going to hide or stand." Her words hit harder than I expected. "I'm not the man you think I am," I said. "I know exactly what kind of man you are, Caleb Turner." "No, you don't." She stepped closer, her voice low but steady. "I know you fixed my roof in a rainstorm without asking for a dime. I know you carried old Mr. Bell for miles when his horse threw him. I know every winter you leave firewood behind the church and pretend someone else did it. That's the man I know." I looked away. "You don't know what I've done."
"No," she said.
"I know what you keep doing." For a while, neither of us spoke. Then the saloon doors burst open across the street. Laughter spilled out. Ugly laughter. I moved to the cracked window. The man with the red bandana dragged Tom Avery onto the porch by the collar. Tom's face was swollen, one eye nearly shut. Silas followed behind them, calm as Sunday morning, with a cigar between his fingers. People watched from windows, but no one stepped out. Silas looked over the street, as if he could see every frightened face hiding from him. "Good morning, Redemption," he called. "Since your sheriff seems to have forgotten how order works, I'll explain it plain. This town is under new protection." The red bandana man shoved Tom down the steps. Tom hit the dirt hard. Martha covered her mouth. Silas continued, "Every business pays. Every ranch pays. Anyone refuses, they lose more than money." His gaze drifted across the street, toward Martha's store, toward me in the window. And this time there was no doubt. He saw me. His smile widened slowly. I stepped out onto the porch. The town froze all over again. Silas took the cigar from his mouth. "Well now." I stood still, empty hands at my sides. He walked down from the saloon porch and into the street. The four men spread behind him. The big one carried the Winchester shotgun low, not aiming, but ready. Pike came out of the sheriff's office, limping but upright. "This ends now, Crow," he said. Silas didn't even look at him. His eyes stayed on me. "Caleb Turner," he said, tasting the name like it amused him. "That still sounds strange." I said nothing. "You got old." "So did you." He laughed softly. "Not dead, though. That must disappoint you. Some mistakes take longer to fix." The smile left his face. The street went so quiet I heard a loose sign creaking above the barber shop. Silas stepped closer, stopping maybe 20 feet away. "You ran," he said. I walked away. "You betrayed your own." I stopped riding with butchers. His eyes hardened. For a second, the man from Abilene stared through the years at me. Not older, not changed, just uncovered. Then Silas looked around at the town. "You people know who this man is?" he shouted. "You know what kind of blood he's got on his hands?" Faces shifted behind windows. My stomach turned, but I did not move. "He rode with me," Silas said. "Robbed with me. Killed with me." Martha stepped onto the porch behind me. "That enough truth for you, Caleb?" Silas asked. I held his stare. "Not all of it." His jaw flexed. Good. He didn't want all of it told, because the full truth made him smaller. He turned back toward his men. "Not today." The big man with the shotgun looked disappointed. Silas faced me again. "Tomorrow at noon. Middle of the street. You and me finish Abilene proper." "No," Pike said. Silas finally glanced at him. "Sheriff, by noon tomorrow you'll either be wise enough to stay inside or dead enough not to matter." Then he looked back at me. "If you don't show, I start burning ranches. Then stores. Then homes." His voice dropped. "And I'll start with hers." His eyes flicked toward Martha. Something hot and old moved through me. But I kept my hands open. Silas wanted me angry. Angry men make mistakes. I had learned that from him. He tipped his hat. "Tomorrow, Caleb." Then he turned and walked back into the saloon with his men behind him. Only after the doors closed did the town begin breathing again. Martha touched my sleeve. I looked at her, then at Pike, then at the faces watching from behind glass. They all knew now. Not everything, but enough to fear me. Enough to wonder if the man they trusted had been a lie. I stepped down from the porch and walked to my horse. Pike followed. "Where are you going?" "To make sure my shotgun fires straight." "Caleb." I untied the canvas from behind my saddle and pulled it back just enough for the Winchester's dark metal to catch the sun. Pike stared at it. I looked toward the saloon. For 8 years, I had prayed never to need that gun again. Now the prayer was over. "Ghosts don't stay buried, Sheriff," I said. "Sometimes they ride back into town and force you to bury them right." And as the noon sun climbed above Redemption, I knew one thing with terrible certainty. By this time tomorrow, either Silas Crow would be dead, or everything I had built would burn. I spent the rest of that morning outside town, alone with my Winchester and the sound of my own breathing. There was an old wash about half a mile behind my ranch, where rainwater used to cut through the dirt before the drought hardened everything into cracked red clay. I had set bottles there years ago for target practice, back when I still told myself a man needed to keep his eyes sharp in case wolves came too close to the cattle. But the truth was simpler. I had been afraid. Afraid that one day my past would find me, and my hands would forget what they once knew. They hadn't. That was what scared me most. The Winchester shotgun felt heavy at first, but after a few minutes, it settled into my grip like it had never left. I loaded 2 shells, raised the barrel, and stared at a rusted coffee tin balanced on a fence post. The wind moved across the open land. I pulled the trigger. The shot cracked through the morning, loud enough to send a flock of blackbirds bursting out of the mesquite. The tin jumped backward and disappeared in the dirt. I lowered the gun. My shoulder remembered the kick. My hands remembered the weight. My eyes remembered how to measure distance, wind, and fear. A man can spend years pretending he has become someone new, but the body keeps records the heart tries to burn. I fired again, then again. Each blast rolled across the dry land and came back to me in echoes. By the time the sun stood high, my shoulder ached, sweat had soaked through my shirt, and empty shells lay scattered near my boots. I stood there staring at the broken targets, wishing I felt relief. I didn't. All I felt was the old door inside me opening wider. When I rode back to the ranch, Martha Miller was waiting on my porch. She had brought a basket wrapped in a blue cloth, and she sat with her back straight, hands folded in her lap, looking less like a frightened shopkeeper and more like a judge waiting for a guilty man. I slowed Blue near the hitching post. "You shouldn't be out here alone," I said. She looked at the shotgun across my saddle. "Seems to me neither should you." I swung down and tied Blue. "Did Pike send you?"
No.
"Then why come?" She lifted the basket slightly. "Because men preparing to die often forget to eat." "I'm not preparing to die." "That's so." I didn't answer. She stood and walked past me into the cabin like she had every right to do so. Maybe she did. I followed, setting the Winchester by the door. Inside, she placed the basket on my table and began taking things out. Bread, dried beef, a jar of preserves, coffee wrapped in paper. I watched her work in silence. Finally, she said, "You're going to face him tomorrow." "Yes." "Alone. That's what he wants." "And since when do you give men like him what they want?" I leaned against the wall. "If I don't, he'll hurt people." "He's hurting people already." "I can keep it centered on me." Martha turned. "Can you?" Her question stayed in the room longer than I liked. I looked at the floorboards. "I owe this town a debt." "You owe this town honesty." That made me look up. Her expression was stern, but not cruel. "People are scared, Caleb," she said. "Not just a crow."
Of you too, now.
They heard what he said. He told the truth. He told the part that served him. I walked to the window. Outside, the pasture shimmered beneath the heat. "The rest won't make much difference." "It might." "No," I said quietly. "Some stains don't wash out just because you explain how they got there." Martha came closer. "Then don't explain to be forgiven," she said. "Explain so people know what they're standing beside." I almost laughed at that. Standing beside me? "Martha, by tomorrow morning most of them will want me gone. And maybe they should." She slapped the table. Not hard, but sharp enough to make me turn. "You don't get to decide for everyone because shame makes you noble in your own mind." I stared at her. Her eyes had fire in them. "You think hiding is humility," she said. "It isn't. Sometimes it's just fear dressed up clean." I had no answer, because she was right. Before I could speak, hoofbeats sounded outside.
Fast.
Both of us turned. I grabbed the Winchester and stepped onto the porch. Deputy Ellis came riding into the yard, pale and wild-eyed, his injured arm tied tight against his chest. His horse was lathered, nostrils flared. "Caleb," he shouted. I moved down the steps. "What happened?" He nearly fell getting out of the saddle. "It's the blacksmith," he said. "Crow's men went to collect. Mr. Hanley refused. Said he'd served in the war and wouldn't pay thieves to let him work his own forge." My stomach tightened. Ellis swallowed. They dragged him into the street. Martha's face went white. "Is he alive?" I asked.
For now.
"Sheriff sent me," he said. A distant sound cut him off. A gunshot. Then another. Far off from town. Martha gripped the porch rail. I didn't wait. I swung into Blue's saddle with the Winchester in my hand. Stay here, I told Martha. Don't you dare. Stay here. I kicked Blue hard, and we tore across the dirt trail toward Redemption. The ride blurred around me. Mesquite branches flashed by. Dust rose behind Blue in a long brown tail. My hat nearly blew off, but I didn't slow. All I could see was Hanley's forge. Old Isaac Hanley was a stubborn man with hands like iron clamps and a laugh that could shake nails loose. He had once fixed my wagon axle for half price because, as he put it, a man alone needs fewer bills and more neighbors. He had no wife, no children, no one to protect him except the town. And the town was afraid. By the time I reached Redemption, people had gathered at windows and doorways again, drawn by fear and trapped by it. Hanley was on his knees in the middle of Main Street. His face was bloodied. One eye was swollen shut. His gray beard was dark with sweat and dirt. The red bandana man stood behind him with a pistol pressed near his ear. Silas Crow sat on a chair outside the saloon, one leg crossed over the other, watching like a man enjoying theater. Sheriff Pike stood 20 paces away, gun drawn but low. His deputy was gone because Ellis had ridden for me. Pike's ribs were too hurt for a fight, and everyone could see it. The big man with the Winchester shotgun stood near Silas.
Boyd.
I knew his name now because I heard Silas say it as I rode in. Easy there, Boyd. Looks like our guest arrived early. I stopped Blue in street. Every face turned toward me. Silas smiled. Caleb Turner, he called. You always did have poor timing. I slid down from the saddle, Winchester low at my side. Let Hanley go. Silas sighed. See, that's the problem with towns like this. A man offers order, and folks mistake it for a negotiation. Hanley lifted his head with effort. Don't pay him nothing, Caleb. The red bandana man struck him across the mouth with the pistol. My hands tightened on the shotgun. Silas noticed. Careful, he said. You start this now, he dies first. Pike's voice came sharp. Crow, enough. Silas didn't look at him. Sheriff, every time you speak, I'm reminded you're still breathing. Don't make that my problem. The street held still. I looked at Boyd. His Winchester was angled toward me. He wanted me to raise mine. I could see it in his grin. He wanted the excuse. The red bandana man kept his pistol on Hanley. 2 others stood near the saloon posts, hands close to their guns. Bad angles. Too many civilians watching. Too much blood if I moved wrong. Silas leaned forward. Tomorrow was my generous offer. But now I'm thinking maybe Redemption needs a lesson today. He stood and walked slowly toward Hanley. You see, Caleb here knows something about lessons. Don't you, Caleb? I said nothing.
He learned one in Abilene.
Learned that when you betray your brothers, you spend the rest of your life looking over your shoulder. He stopped beside Hanley and looked at the townspeople. And you all should learn one now. When a town shelters a coward, the town pays for him. Hanley spat blood into the dirt. He ain't the coward here. Silas looked down at him. Then he kicked him.
Hard.
Hanley folded sideways with a groan. Something inside me moved. Not broke.
Moved.
Like a latch being lifted. I took 1 step forward. Boyd raised the shotgun. He said. I stopped. Silas smiled. There he is. I wondered how much it would take. I looked at Hanley, then at Pike, then at the faces behind glass. I saw fear. I saw judgment. I saw hope too, though nobody wanted to admit it. That was the cruelest part. They wanted someone to act. They were just terrified it had to be me. Silas turned to the red bandana man. Make it permanent. The man cocked his pistol. Time slowed. I saw Pike lift his gun. Too far and too late. I saw Boyd's finger tighten. I saw Hanley close his one good eye. And I knew the line had been crossed. I raised the Winchester. Boyd fired first. His blast tore splinters from the hitching post beside me. Blue screamed and reared away, pulling loose from the rail. I fired before Boyd could pump another shell. The shot hit the dirt at his feet, close enough to blast dust and gravel into his legs. He shouted and stumbled back. I wasn't trying to kill him. Not yet. The street exploded. Pike fired at the red bandana man, forcing him away from Hanley. The man's pistol shot went wild, shattering a saloon window. People screamed and ducked. I moved left, fast for a man my size, and fired my second barrel toward the saloon posts. The blast tore wood from the beam above one gunman's head. He dropped flat instead of drawing. Inside. Pike shouted to the townspeople, "Get inside." Silas moved backward, not afraid but furious. Boyd regained his footing and raised the Winchester again. I had no shell loaded. He knew it. His grin came back. Then a rifle cracked from the general store roof. Boyd's hat flew off his head. He froze. Everyone froze. I looked up. Martha Miller stood behind the roof sign with an old Spencer rifle braced against her shoulder. "Next one won't be your hat," she shouted. For the first time since he rode into town, Silas Crow looked surprised. That surprise saved us. I broke open the Winchester, loaded 2 shells from my belt, and snapped it shut. Pike reached Hanley and dragged him behind a wagon. The red bandana man fired toward Martha. The bullet punched through the store sign. I fired back. This time I didn't aim at the dirt. The shot caught him in the shoulder and spun him hard onto the saloon steps. His pistol clattered away across the boards. Silas shouted something I couldn't hear. One of his men grabbed the wounded red bandana man and pulled him inside. Boyd backed toward the saloon doors, his face twisted with rage. His eyes met mine. He wanted another chance. I gave him a look that promised he'd get one. Then Silas stepped into the doorway, half hidden in shadow. "This ain't over," he called. "No," I said, loud enough for the whole street to hear. "It isn't." For a long moment, neither of us moved. Then Silas disappeared into the saloon, and the doors swung shut behind him. The gun smoke drifted slowly through Main Street. No one spoke. I lowered the Winchester. My hands were steady. That frightened me more than the shooting. Pike knelt beside Hanley, checking his breathing.
"He's alive," he said. "A few people came out then."
Not many at first. Then more. Tom Avery limped from behind a barrel. Mrs. Bell ran across the street with cloth for bandages. The barber brought water. Deputy Ellis rode in behind me, shame all over his young face because he had missed the fight. But nobody blamed him. Fear makes everyone late. Martha climbed down from the roof a few minutes later, rifle still in hand. She walked straight to me. "You told me to stay at the ranch," she said. "I did." "I didn't." I noticed. Her hands were shaking now, but her chin was high. I looked at the bullet hole in the store sign above us. "You could have been killed." "So could you." "That's different." "No," she said. "It isn't." Before I could answer, Pike approached. His face was tight with pain, but his eyes were clear. "You just started a war in my town," he said. I looked toward the saloon.
"No."
Crow started it when he touched Hanley. Pike studied me. "Can we win it?" That question changed everything. "Not can you."
"Can we?"
I looked around. At Tom with his bruised face. At Martha with the rifle. At Ellis holding his injured arm. At the frightened people stepping slowly into the street because, for the first time, Crow's men had backed down.
They weren't brave yet.
But bravery often starts as anger with nowhere else to go. "We can," I said. "But not if people keep hiding." Pike nodded once. Then he raised his voice. "Everyone listen. Crow and his men are trapped in that saloon for now. That won't last. Anyone who can shoot, fetch a rifle. Anyone who can't, board windows and move children to the church cellar. We hold the town until morning." A murmur moved through the crowd. Fear again. Then Martha stepped forward. "You heard the sheriff," she said. "Move." And they did. Slowly at first, then with purpose. Boards were pulled from sheds. Ammunition boxes opened. Men who hadn't held rifles in years went home to clean them. Women carried water, cloth, and lantern oil. The town that had been frozen all morning began to move like a body, remembering it had bones. I stood in the street with the Winchester in my hands and watched redemption change. But I knew Silas. He wouldn't wait until noon now. He would strike when darkness gave him cover. And he would strike where it hurt. Near sundown, we found out where. A boy came running from the church, crying so hard he could barely speak. He grabbed Pike's coat and pointed east. "Smoke," he gasped. "Smoke by the Miller place." Martha went still beside me. Her home. I turned toward the horizon. A black column rose beyond the edge of town, thin at first, then widening into the orange sky. Silas had made his answer. He couldn't break me in the street, so he had reached for someone I cared about. Martha made a sound like all the air had left her. I looked at the smoke, then at the saloon. The doors were closed, the windows dark. Silas was no longer inside. My grip tightened around the Winchester until my knuckles burned. The line had not just been crossed. It had been burned behind us. And as the first flames began to color the evening sky, I knew the last stand would not wait for tomorrow. The fire was still climbing when we reached Martha's place. By the time we rode out, the sky had turned that deep orange that comes just before night swallows everything whole. The smoke column we'd seen from town wasn't just a warning. It was a message. Silas didn't need words anymore. He was done playing. Martha didn't wait for me or the sheriff. The moment we cleared the last building in Redemption, she kicked her horse hard and rode ahead of us like she had no fear left to lose. "Slow down," Pike called after her. She didn't. Neither did I. Blue stretched beneath me, hooves pounding against the dirt as we chased the smoke. The closer we got, the stronger the smell became. Burning wood, scorched fabric, and something else that tightened my chest.
Loss.
We crested the rise just as the flames came into full view. Martha's house was already half gone. The roof had collapsed inward on one side, sending sparks high into the air. The small barn behind it burned slower, thick beams holding on stubbornly, but they would give soon enough. Fire doesn't negotiate. Martha pulled her horse to a stop, so hard it nearly bucked. "No," she whispered. I slid off Blue before he fully stopped and ran forward. "Stay back," I shouted.
She didn't listen.
Of course she didn't. I caught her by the arm just before she could rush the porch. "It's gone," I said. "My things, her voice broke. "Everything is in there." I looked at the fire.
No.
Not everything. Some things you carry inside you. And those can't be burned. But I knew better than to say that. Behind us, Pike and Ellis rode up, followed by two other men from town carrying buckets they already knew were useless. You can't fight a fire like that without a well, and time neither of us had. Ellis jumped down and stared. They did this while we were distracted, Pike finished. I walked around the side of the house, scanning the ground. Tracks. 5 horses.
Fresh.
They hadn't stayed long. Long enough to set the fire. Long enough to make sure it caught. But not long enough to wait. They wanted us here.
"They're not done," I said.
Pike came up beside me. "You think they're coming back?"
"No," I said.
"I think they're already moving." "Moving where?" I turned toward the direction of town. Back to Redemption. Martha heard that. She pulled her arm free from me, eyes wet but burning with something harder now. "You mean to say they burned my home just to pull us out?" "Yes." Her jaw tightened. "Then we ride back."
"No."
The word came out sharper than I intended. She turned on me. "No." "They want to split," I said. Scattered. Angry. That's when men make mistakes. And standing still is better?
"No."
Thinking is better. Pike stepped in. "Caleb's right. Crow doesn't do anything without a reason. If he wanted to take the town, he'd have done it while we were gone." Ellis frowned. "Then why go back?" "Because he wants something else," I said. Silence hung for a moment, broken only by the crackle of burning wood behind us. Then it hit me. Not the town. Not the land.
Me.
"He's going to force the fight tonight," I said.
Pike looked at me.
"You said noon." That was before I shot at his men. Martha stepped closer. "So, what changes now?" "He doesn't wait," I said. "He comes for me before the town can prepare." Ellis swallowed. "Where?" I looked at the fire one last time. Then I turned back toward the open land between the ranches and Redemption. There's only one place with enough space, I said. And enough meaning. Pike understood before I finished. The old crossroads. I nodded. 4 dirt paths meeting in the middle of nothing. No cover. No buildings. Just open ground where a man can see death coming from a long way off. And nowhere to hide. Silas always liked to stage. Martha wiped her face with the back of her hand. Then we go there. No, I said again. She laughed bitterly. You're going to say that every time? Yes, I said. Because this part is mine. Pike shook his head. No, Caleb. Not anymore. You pulled us into this. I didn't pull anyone. You stood in the street, he cut in. You fired first. I fired to stop a man from dying. And now more men might die because of it. That hit
hard.
But he wasn't wrong. Martha stepped between us. Enough. We both fell silent. She looked at me first. You think facing him alone ends this? Yes. And you're sure of that? No, I said honestly. She nodded slowly. Then she turned to Pike. And you think standing together gives us a better chance? Yes. Are you sure? Pike hesitated. No, he said. Martha looked at both of us. Good, she said. Then we stopped pretending either option is safe. The fire behind her collapsed inward with a roar, sending sparks into the darkening sky. For a moment, we all just stood there. Then I spoke. If we go together, we do it my way. Pike crossed his arms. And what's that? I stepped closer to the dirt and drew a rough shape with my boot. The crossroads sits here, I said. Open ground all around. No cover except a few low rocks and the slope on the north side. Ellis crouched beside me. They'll expect us to come straight in. Exactly, I said. So we don't. I pointed to the west path. You and 2 men take the ridge. Stay low. If shooting starts, you cover from above. Pike nodded. I pointed east. Ellis, you stay with the townspeople near the edge. Keep them back, keep them safe. If things go bad, you get them out. Ellis didn't like that. I saw it in his face. But he nodded anyway. Then I looked at Martha. No. She opened her mouth. No, I repeated. You've done enough. My home is gone. I know. I have nothing left there. I know. Then I'm not standing behind anyone tonight. Her voice didn't shake. I looked at the rifle still in her hands. Then I remembered Boyd's hat flying off under her shot. You stay on the ridge with Pike, I said finally. Not in the open. She considered it. Then nodded. That was the best I was going to get. Pike stood. And you? I picked up the Winchester. I walk into the middle. Ellis looked up. Alone. Yes. Why? Because that's what he wants, I said. And, tonight, I give him just enough of what he wants to make him step wrong. Pike studied me. And when he does? I looked toward the horizon, where the last light was dying. Then we end it. We reached the crossroads just as night settled fully over the land. The moon hadn't risen yet. The sky was dark, stretched wide and empty, with only a scattering of stars beginning to show. The wind had died. Even the insects seemed quiet. That kind of silence doesn't happen by accident. I stepped into the center of the crossroads, boots crunching softly on dry dirt. The Winchester rested steady in my hands, loaded, ready. Behind me, far enough not to be seen, Pike and Martha took position on the ridge. Ellis and the others stayed back along the road, hidden in shadow. I stood alone, waiting. Time moved slowly. Minutes stretched long. Then, hoofbeats. 5 of them, coming from the south. I didn't turn. I let them come into view. Silas rode at the front, just like before. His black coat moved with the rhythm of the horse. The others followed, shapes in the dark, but I knew them by now. Boyd with a Winchester. The red bandana man, arm bound from where I'd shot him. The others silent and ready. They stopped 20 yards out. Silas dismounted slowly, like a man stepping onto a stage he had built himself. Well now, he said. You came. I didn't answer. He smiled. Alone, too. I'm almost disappointed. You wanted this, I said. I wanted you to stop running. I stopped. He walked closer, boots scraping against the dirt. The others spread out slightly behind him. I could feel Pike's eyes from the ridge. Feel Martha's presence in the dark. But this part was still between me and Silas. You burned her house, I said. I sent a message. You could have sent it to me. I did, he said. You just needed to feel it. I tightened my grip on the Winchester. Silas saw it.
Good.
Let him think anger was leading me. He stopped 10 paces away. Abilene, he said softly. You remember how it ended? I remember you running. His smile twitched. I remember you bleeding, he replied, begging the dirt to swallow you. I remember walking away. He tilted his head. That's the story you tell yourself? It's the truth. No, Silas said. The truth is you got lucky. Then come see how lucky I am now. The wind stirred slightly, brushing dust across the ground between us. Behind him, Boyd shifted. Too eager. Too ready. That was the crack. Silas raised a hand slightly, holding his men back. For 8 years, he said, I wondered what I'd do when I found you. And I realized something, he said. It's not enough to kill you. I didn't move. I have to make you remember, he continued.
Who you really are.
I met his gaze. I already remember. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then he nodded.
Good.
His hand dropped. Boyd raised the shotgun. And everything broke. I moved first. Not back. Forward. Straight into the space between us. The first shot exploded from Boyd's gun, but it went wide, thrown off by my sudden movement. I fired both barrels of the Winchester in quick succession, one toward Boyd's chest, the other toward the man beside him. The night erupted in gunfire. From the ridge, Pike's rifle cracked. Martha's shot followed. Silas dove to the side. Fast. Faster than most men his age should move. I dropped the empty shells and reached for more. This wasn't a duel anymore. This was war. And it would end here. One way or another. The first seconds of a gunfight don't feel real. They stretch. They twist. Every sound comes sharper, louder, like the world itself is trying to make sure you understand exactly what you've chosen. I heard everything. Boyd's shotgun roaring again. The crack of Pike's rifle from the ridge. Martha's shot. Steady, controlled, precise. The grunt of a man hit. The thud of boots scrambling over dirt. And beneath it all, my own breathing. Slow. Steady. Too steady. I slammed 2 shells into the Winchester without looking and snapped it shut just as Boyd charged forward, rage burning in his eyes. He was fast for a man his size. Too fast for someone who had just taken a near miss. He fired again. The blast tore past my shoulder, hot air and dust slamming into my face. I stepped inside his range before he could cycle the lever, drove the butt of my shotgun into his chest, and felt the breath leave him in a hard, broken sound. He staggered. I fired. This time, I didn't aim to scare. The shot hit him square. Boyd dropped. Hard. He didn't move again. No time to think. No time to breathe. A pistol cracked to my right, one of the others. The bullet snapped past my ear. I turned, raised the Winchester. Empty. I had fired both shells. I dropped low as another shot kicked dirt near my boots, then rolled behind one of the few rocks scattered near the crossroads. It wasn't much cover, but it was enough to break a line of sight. From the ridge, Pike fired again. A man screamed. Martha's rifle followed. Another sharp crack, and the screaming stopped. That left Silas, and one more. The red bandana man. I heard him moving, boots scraping fast, circling wide. He was trying to flank me. Smart. But he was injured. And wounded men get desperate. I broke the Winchester open, hands moving without thought, dropping in 2 more shells. My fingers didn't fumble. They didn't shake. That scared me. Because it meant I wasn't fighting to survive anymore. I was fighting like I used to. I rose just enough to see. The red bandana man came around the far side, pistol raised, his wounded shoulder dragging slightly. He saw me the same instant I saw him. He fired. I fired. His shot went wild. Mine didn't. The blast caught him across the chest and spun him backward into the dirt. His pistol slipped from his hand, and he lay still, eyes open to a sky that didn't care. Silence fell. Not complete, not peaceful, but heavy. Gun smoke drifted low across the crossroads, curling around boots and bodies. The smell of powder hung thick in the air. I stood slowly. Only one man left. Silas Crow. I turned.
He was already watching me.
Standing 10 paces away, revolver in hand, coat hanging open, his face half-shadowed in the dark. He hadn't run. Of course he hadn't. Silas wasn't the kind of man who ran from endings. He stepped forward. "So," he said quietly, "it's just us again." My Winchester was loaded. His revolver was steady. No one else moved. No more shots came from the ridge. Pike and Martha understood. This part was mine. The wind picked up just enough to move dust between us. I took one step forward. He mirrored it. "Abilene," he said. "Abilene," I answered. He smiled faintly. "You always did hate how that night ended." "I hated what you made it."
"I didn't make anything," he said.
"I showed you what you were willing to become." "No," I said. "You showed me what I refused to be." His eyes narrowed. "That's where you're wrong," he said. "You think walking away changed you. You think hiding under a new name turned you into something better."
I didn't respond.
Because part of me had asked that same question every night for 8 years. Silas took another step. "You're still the same man who pulled a trigger without blinking," he continued. "Still the same man who decided who lived and who died." "And you think that makes us the same?" I asked. "It does." "No," I said quietly. "The difference is, I regret it." That landed. Not like a punch, more like a weight. Silas tilted his head slightly. "Regret," he repeated. "That's your grand redemption?" "No," I said. "This is." I raised the Winchester. He raised his revolver. The distance between us felt smaller than it was. Too small. Too final. For a moment, everything went still. No wind. No sound. No past. No future. Just two men, and the truth between them. Then, he fired.
So did I.
The world snapped back into motion. His bullet tore across my side, hot and sharp, like a brand pressed into flesh. It spun me half around, but I stayed on my feet. My shot hit him. Center mass. The force drove him backward a step, then another. His revolver fell from his hand. For a second, he didn't fall. He just stood there looking almost surprised. Then his knees gave out. He dropped to the dirt. Hard. The sound echoed louder than it should have. I lowered the Winchester slowly. My side burned. Warmth spread under my shirt, but I was still standing. I walked toward him, each step heavier than the last. Silas lay on his back, staring up at the sky. Blood darkened his coat, spreading outward in slow, steady waves. He turned his head when I reached him. "You always were stubborn," he said, voice thinner now. I stopped beside him. "So were you." He let out a weak breath that might have been a laugh. "Tell me something," he said. "Do you think this changes anything?" I looked down at him. "Yes." "No," he said softly. "Men like us don't get to change. We just delay the ending."
I thought about that.
About the years I'd spent building something quiet, something honest. About Martha, about Pike, about the town that had looked at me with fear, and then with something else. Hope. "You're wrong," I said. He blinked slowly. "Am I?" "Yes," I said, "because I already changed." He stared at me for a long moment. Then his eyes drifted upward again. The stars had come out fully now.
Cold. Distant.
Unmoved. Silas Crow exhaled one last time. And didn't breathe again. I stood there longer than I should have. Not because I was waiting for him to move, but because something inside me was settling. Closing. The past didn't disappear. It never does. But it loses its grip. Behind me, footsteps approached.
Pike.
Then Martha. Neither of them spoke at first. They didn't need to. Pike stopped beside me and looked down at Silas. "It's over." "Yes," I said. Martha stepped closer, her rifle lowered now. She looked at Silas, then at me.
"You're bleeding," she said.
I glanced down. The wound wasn't deep. Painful, but not fatal. "I've had worse," I said. She didn't smile, but something in her eyes softened. The ridge behind us filled slowly with others. Ellis. A few men from town. They moved carefully, looking at the bodies, at the ground, at the place where everything had come undone. No one cheered. No one celebrated. That's not how endings like this work. They come quiet, heavy, real. Pike looked at me. "You saved this town." I shook my head. "We did." He nodded once. Martha stepped closer again. "My house is gone," she said. "I know." She took a breath. "Guess I'll need somewhere to stay." I looked at her, then at the land stretching out around us, then back at her. "You can take the spare room," I said. She raised an eyebrow. "You have a spare room? I'll build one." That time, she almost smiled. We stood there a while longer, under the wide Texas sky, with the wind finally returning to carry the smoke and the past away. I looked down at the Winchester in my hands. For years, I had hidden from it, from what it meant, from what it remembered. Now it was just a tool again. Nothing more. I broke it open and removed the shells. Then I closed it gently. "Come on," I said. "Let's go home." And for the first time in a long while, that word felt real.